Bleach Thousand Year Blood War episode 32 The Holy Newborn has just released, and this episode pretty much continues with some of the downtime that we've been having from the battles, as there is quite a lot of setup going on with the various different groups in the story, with Urahara and the Gotei 13 trying to create a gate to enter the royal palace, with Ichigo and his group who have just encountered Grimmjow, who are also preparing with their own very unique way of returning to the battlefield. Then you have the Schutzstaffel who are with Yhwach, who has just finished absorbing the Soul King, as he is about to create the landscape for where the future battles in the story are going to be taking place. Episode 32 is pretty straightforward as it adapts manga material from chapters 625 all the way up until the early portion of chapter 629. There is also some content from chapter 617 which wasn't adapted into earlier episodes, which they have included here. There are a lot of highlights in this episode, with the return of Rurouni and Yukio to the story, with the Valley of Screams finally getting a mention within the anime, which proves that Bleach Movie 1 is in fact canon. Yoruichi also has a lot of screen time, which is never a bad thing, and in addition to Grimmjow's reintroduction into the story, we also have the long-awaited return of Neliel, which was another highlight of this episode. For the most part, this episode closely follows the material from the manga, with a few anime original scenes which last for about 10 to 20 seconds, which expand upon a few manga panels, like for example Yhwach transforming the royal palace into an all-new Quincy cityscape as he connects the 5 palaces of the Zero Division to the fallen palace of the Soul King, and on top of this new city he constructs his castle called Vaharvelt. There is quite a lot to discuss with episode 32, so without further delay, let's dive into my breakdown of the latest Bleach Thousand Year Blood War episode titled The Holy Newborn. We got really tired of the same old boring anime shirts, so we decided to launch Getsuga.com with the aim of creating designs inspired by our favorite anime and manga. We came up with designs that look cool and represent all of our favorite stories. Check out the latest Instinct collection, which features some amazing designs like this Frosted Heavens design inspired by Toshiro Hitsugaya, or this Instinct design inspired by Hollow Ichigo, and my personal favorite, which is the heart design, which was inspired by Ukiura Shifa. Do not miss out, go to Getsuga.com and wear your favorite stories. So the episode begins with a scene where we see the Shinigami along with the Quincy charging up the orbs in order to create a gate to the royal palace. The gate appears to be forming correctly until an anomaly is detected, and the Quincy cityscape which was covering the Serite begins to rise up into the sky. Now because of this disruption, the gate that they were trying to create begins to dissipate. Now there is quite a bit of reorganizing of the manga content, but it's nothing too major, and I feel like the way that the anime is restructuring the manga content, it allows for a lot of side characters who didn't have much screen time to be given the opportunity to have some new dialogue, even if it's dialogue that another character had spoken within the manga, but it's said by somebody else within the anime. So with Urahara stating that they need to quickly create the gate, and Mayuri also working in the background, we then cut to the opening song. So the episode begins with a really cool confrontation between Ichigo and Grimmjow, and honestly this was so fun to see animated. Before a full-blown rematch kicks off between them, Neliel appears and interrupts the scene, and it's honestly really funny seeing Orihime react to her sudden appearance with her in her adult form. We learn that Urahara has created a device which allows her to freely transform from her adult and child self. There's a lot of comedic moments from the manga which have been retained within this episode, like Chad trying to reassure Orihime by saying that Urahara is trying his best despite him creating unnecessary things like Neliel's transformation device. Now following this, we have the appearance of Yukio and Rurouni into the story. Now Urahara, being aware of their Fullbring abilities, had located them, asking for their help, as Yoruichi explains within Yukio's domain that the Dangai connects the Soul Society to the world of the living. Now located within the Dangai are various areas of size called the Valley of Screams. Now if you've watched Bleach Movie 1, you know all about these. For souls that get lost within the Dangai, they usually accumulate within the Garganta and they create these pockets called the Valley of Screams. We've seen Ichigo and the others use the Garganta a couple of times when they travel to Hueco Mundo, as Yoruichi explains that spiritual pressure is unstable within the Garganta, and it's for this reason that anybody traveling through the Garganta needs to constantly create a footing by discharging their spiritual pressure. Now, for some reason, within the unstable environment of the Garganta, the Valley of Screams are able to perfectly exist. Urahara, noting the unique reishi structure of the Valley of Screams, had thought of taking advantage of it. In order to do so, he had put to use the powers of Yukio's Fullbring, which allows him to freely use the power of electricity, and combining this with Riruka's power to freely move subjects in and out of objects. So using Riruka's power, they had carried a small Valley of Screams into a box. They had altered this box into a room and had put rails on it by using Yukio's power. So they have effectively created a Valley of Screams elevator which allows them to travel back up to the royal palace. Now, they can only travel from where they are to the marker that Yoruichi had placed when she was trying to seal the Soul King. So while they can only move for a short distance, the benefit of using Yukio's power is that they can enter into the enemy territory without releasing any spiritual pressure. This is perfect for them to mount a surprise attack against the Quincy. Now, following this, the anime goes back and covers a few pages which weren't adapted into earlier episodes, and I'm really glad that they've gone and done this, because Nanao speaks some dialogue here about Ukitake, mentioning how he had a large amount of spiritual pressure, which is the reason why he was able to survive within a debilitated body. So no other captain's level of energy comes close to Ukitake's. Nanao says this because if Ukitake was helping, then the gate would not be disappearing like it is. Now, thankfully, all of the problems with the gate are resolved when Mayuri reveals his spiritual pressure amplification device. With this, the gate begins to perfectly form, as the Gote 13 now also have a way of entering the royal palace. The anime does a great job of syncing up what's going on with the Gote 13 with Ichigo's group, as they too are making their return. While they're in Yukio's room, there's a moment of downtime where everybody is just talking, and Yoruichi explains to Ichigo that he needs to take advantage and launch a powerful surprise attack against the Quincy, and if anybody tries to get in the way, then she's going to back him up. When Chad and Orihime begin to get gloomy over Yhwach's ability to see into the future, Riruka tells them to stop whining, and it's just really nice to have a few of these light-hearted moments here, as we also cut to another brief exchange between Ichigo and Grimmjow, as we get a bit of an explanation as to why Grimmjow is helping the Shinigami, as he states that if Yhwach has his way, then Hueco Mundo will no longer exist, and if that's the case, then where else is Grimmjow going to kill Ichigo? It is so fun to see Grimmjow, who was a rival slash enemy to Ichigo, now return as his ally. Now we cut back to the Quincy, as Yhwach has pretty much finished absorbing the Soul King, and these multiple eyes appear on his head. Yhwach's new form is so terrifying that it even surprises and frightens some of the Schutzstaffel. The anime does a great job here of adding some new scenes showcasing how Yhwach had transformed the royal palace into his new fortress. At the beginning of this scene, we did get a close-up shot of Uryu, and we see him thinking back to Ichigo killing the Soul King and then falling from the royal palace after Uryu had defeated him. This is a very brief anime exclusive scene, as it helps us to understand how Uryu is adjusting into his new role as a member of the Schutzstaffel. It adds a lot of layers of complexity to his character, while also adding a lot of believability to his betrayal. Just like in the manga, the anime adapts the manga panels where Askin appears to be afraid of Yhwach's new form, and this is contrasted against Hashwald's calm demeanor. I loved seeing all of this animated and properly voice acted. Now following this, we cut to the mid-cards, and the first one explains the gate which the Gote 13 are creating to the royal palace. This mid-card details how Urahara had devised a unique method of transportation by combining the distorted material generated between the boundaries between the Dangai and the world of the living, and fusing this with the Reiatsu of the Shinigami and the Quincy in order to create a direct gate linking the Serite to the royal palace. The mid-card specifies that whoever travels using this method may not have a way of returning, because this method only works until the barriers between the Serite and the royal palace have been restored. If you recall, each of the barriers were destroyed by Ichigo's Oken clothing when he had returned to the Serite in Core 2. The second mid-card goes into detail about the Valley of Screams. The second half of the episode begins with Ichigo's group nearing the royal palace. Yukio, while playing his game, confirms that he will not be helping them any further once they arrive at their destination. While Ganju is frustrated, Ichigo calms him down while at the same time thanking Ruroka for her help. He acknowledges that Ruruka only likes cute things, and she is somebody who only puts things that she likes into boxes, so it must have been hard for her to put the Valley of Screams into a box, because it is far from anything cute. Ichigo does acknowledge here within the anime that he has entered the Valley of Screams once before. Now this is dialogue taken right out of the manga, and the only other time that Ichigo has entered the Valley of Screams is in Bleach Movie 1. I was waiting for Ichigo to say this line because this confirms that Bleach Memories of Nobody is canon. We then cut to the Serite, and thanks to Mayuri's help, their gate has also been completed, and the timing couldn't be more perfect as Ichigo and his group have returned to the Royal Palace. Now the two groups enter and discover the Quincy cityscape. Now they are confused whether if they have in fact entered the Royal Palace or if they have come somewhere else. Yoruichi confirms that they have arrived exactly at the spot where she had driven her stake into the ground, while Urahara explains to the Gote 13 that their coordinates state that they are right on top of the Serite, so they should be at the Royal Palace. Shunsui elaborates that the town that was lifted from the Serite has been rebuilt on top of the Royal Palace. Now this is so hype-inducing because while we have had a lot of downtime in these last two episodes, this in fact is the battleground for the remainder of Core 3 and Core 4. This new landscape is where the final battles of the 1000-year Blood War arc will be taking place. I'm really impressed with how the transformed Royal Palace looks, with the sky being covered in black, with the 5 floating cities of the Zero Division now being connected to the central structure, as the appearance of this Quincy fortress now resembles a 5-pointed Quincy cross. The Royal Palace, which was once the sacred, most guarded realm of the Shinigami, has now been brought down and it is in the hands of the enemy. Now following this, we learn that Yushiro, Yoruichi's younger brother, has also arrived there with them. Sensing Yoruichi's spiritual pressure, he tries to rush to her, but he almost falls off of the platform, as we learn that he had struggled to create a foothold with spiritual pressure for some reason. Byakuya explains that ordinarily, the atmosphere of the Royal Palace will be perfect for the Shinigami as it is dense with reishi. They wouldn't have any trouble with creating a foothold with that kind of density. But now that the Royal Palace is under the Quincy's control, the reishi has been altered in the atmosphere, as Byakuya adds that it makes sense that the Quincy would prepare a battleground which is the most disadvantageous to the Shinigami. This wouldn't be too hard for the leader of the Quincy to do, since the Quincy are known for being able to control the nature of reishi in their surroundings. Asoifon says that she is struggling to sense the spiritual pressure of the Soul King, but Shunsui interrupts her, stating that he can feel Ichigo's spiritual pressure, which is reassuring, as this confirms that his group wasn't wiped out. He also adds that even if the Soul King was killed by the hands of the Quincy, then all they have to do is to defeat the Quincy and choose a new Soul King. So this is pretty awesome. Shunsui leads the Gote 13 to now charge against the Quincy, as we get a very brief anime exclusive scene of Lil Toto and Giselle along with Bazz-B reacting to the formation of Yhwach's castle. The episode begins to wrap up as we see the Schutzstaffel kneeling before Yhwach inside of the castle, with Hashward reporting that Ichigo's group and the Gote 13 have arrived at the same time. Yhwach tells them that this castle will be the foundation for a new world, as he names the castle Vahervelt, which means Castle of the True World. So before things kick off in episode 33, Hashward tells Yhwach that they will kill every last one of the enemy so that they can actualize the future which is reflected within Yhwach's eyes. And they will do this at the foundation of the new world, which is the new fortress that he has constructed called Vahervelt. We then cut to the credits and there is no post-credit scene in this week's episode. What is really interesting is that the preview for episode 33 has a poem for Renji. Now this poem is taken from the beginning of volume 73 of the manga. In the Bleach opening song, we did see a couple of scenes involving Renji's character where he seems like he's going through something. This all but confirms that Renji will definitely have an anime exclusive fight scene in Core 3, and it's very likely that this could be happening within the next episode. We know that he has formed a bond with Bazz-B, so I wonder whether if he is going to accompany Bazz-B by confronting Hashward with him. We have all of this to look forward to in next week's episode, but as for episode 32, this was yet again another really fun installment of the 1000-year Blood War arc anime. Seeing all of those scenes with Grimmjow and Neliel, having Ruruka and Yukio help out Ichigo's group, then that downtime where Yoruichi was explaining to Ichigo what was going on while they were traveling to the Royal Palace. Then at the same time we see the Gote 13 going through their own struggles with trying to create the gate, as we had gone back and adapted added that content from chapter 617, where Nanao explains the spiritual pressure of Ukitake, which I'm so glad was included in this episode. Also, it's nice to see that the anime is still showing love to Mayuri, who is effectively the MVP of this final arc, as he was able to assist Urahara with the Reiatsu amplification device. Even though things are being restructured and the order is different within the anime, I'm really glad that they are retaining all of the important story beats from the manga. I'm confident that they are doing this so effectively thanks to Kubo's role as supervisor for this anime. With his involvement, he's able to seamlessly reorganize the events of the manga, as well as adding new content which wasn't there in the first place, and in the end it results in a definitive version of the 1000-year Blood War arc of Bleach. Now, episode 33 is titled Gate of the Sun, and this is named after chapter 629, and like I've mentioned, it promises to be yet another very exciting episode, as there is no more downtime. We're going to cut straight back into the action, with a battleground set, with Ichigo's group and the Gote 13 ready, and the Shoot Starfall ready to mobilize. We are now well and truly entering into the endgame of this arc. Let me know all of your thoughts about episode 32 of the 1000-year Blood War arc anime. What do you think about the return of Neliel, Grimjow, Riruka, and Yukio? Are you glad that movie 1 of Bleach is canon now? What are your thoughts about the depiction of Vaharvelt within the anime, with the black skies and the icy blue surroundings? And what are your predictions based upon the poem that we had at the end of the episode? What new scenes can we possibly expect involving Renji's character in episode 33? I look forward to reading all of your thoughts, and as always, please do stick around to the channel as I'll be back with a complete manga versus anime video tomorrow, where I'll break down all of the changes and new additions in this week's episode. Lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow for my manga versus anime video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.